Ghost and supernatural stories by ghostly echoes retold. My cousin Sarah once told me about the house her family moved into when she was a child. It was an old Victorian place, the kind you'd expect to see in a period drama, with creaky floors and tall, narrow windows. Every night at 3 o'clock, a soft, tuneless whistle floated through the hallways. They dismissed it at first, drafts, they said, or the house settling. But one night, her father, a practical man who didn't believe in nonsense, decided to track it down. He followed the sound to the basement, where it seemed to emanate from behind a bricked-up alcove. The whistle grew louder as he approached, accompanied by a faint tapping from the other side of the bricks. He leaned in, straining to hear, and that's when he swore he heard a whisper. Still waiting. When he told the rest of the family, they were too terrified to investigate further. Years later, when the house was sold, the new owners tore down the alcove and found nothing but dust and a neatly folded child's dress. My friend Jake had an experience by a lake when he went camping with a group of friends. It was a remote spot, beautiful but eerily quiet, and the locals had warned them about the Ferryman. According to the legend, on foggy nights a golden light would appear on the water, guiding the lost. Jake didn't believe in such stories. But that night, as the fog rolled in, a faint light began to dance across the lake. Curious, one of his friends waded in, calling out. The light grew closer, almost playful, until it hovered just out of reach. Then it dimmed, revealing an ancient, rusted lantern held by what looked like skeletal fingers. Jake told me the voice that followed was barely above a whisper. "Your turn to guide." His friend vanished beneath the water, and when the group fled back to shore, they found the lantern resting on the sand, flickering faintly. My grandmother had her own chilling tale. As a young woman, she worked as a seamstress in a small tailor's shop. One night she stayed late to repair a wedding gown, an old dress that had belonged to a bride who disappeared on her wedding day. The work was tedious, and as she stitched, the light began to flicker. At first she thought it was her tired eyes playing tricks on her, but then she noticed her shadow moving independently of her. Its arms mimicked her sewing motions, weaving invisible threads in the air. She froze as the shadow turned to face her, hollow eye sockets fixed on her. It whispered, "Finish what I couldn't." When the dress was finally complete, she said it looked alive, the red threads glowing like veins. She left the shop that night and never returned. Liam, a co-worker of mine, told me about a chilling experience he had at a remote train station late one winter's night. He had missed the last train and was left waiting alone, shivering in the cold. The station was silent, except for the faint sound of a distant whistle. A station master, an older man with a weathered face, approached him and said something strange. "There's a train that passes through here sometimes. It doesn't stop, and you shouldn't try to get on it." Liam, thinking it was a joke or an attempt to scare him, laughed it off and waited near the edge of the platform. After some time, he heard the screeching of brakes and saw the faint glow of headlights cutting through the fog. A train came barreling down the tracks, its windows dark, its structure decrepit, barely held together. He told me that the figures inside weren't like anything he'd ever seen. Their faces were blurred, their hands pressed against the glass as if they were trying to escape. As the train sped by, Liam said he felt an overwhelming urge to step closer. He described a voice in his head whispering, "Next stop yours." At the very last second, the station master grabbed his arm and pulled him back with a force that sent him sprawling onto the platform. The train disappeared into the fog as suddenly as it had appeared. The station master helped him to his feet and said, "It doesn't take everyone, but it tries." When Liam looked down, he saw a deep tear in his coat sleeve, as though someone had clawed at him. He left the station in a daze, vowing never to return. Weeks later, he showed me the coat, with its sleeve still shredded, and the faint marks on his arm that looked like handprints. He said he'd never forget the sound of that whistle. My sister once got lost in a dense forest while hiking. She said the strangest thing about it was the echoes. Every step she took, every word she called out, was mimicked by an identical sound behind her. It wasn't long before she realized the echoes were distorted. Her voice sounded distant, almost mocking. Following what she thought was her own laughter, she stumbled into a clearing. There were figures everywhere, standing still with their faces hidden. When she called out, they repeated her words in overlapping, eerie harmony. One stepped forward, its face identical to hers, and whispered, "We are you. Stay." She ran, but she swears she could still hear the laughter long after she escaped the forest. The last story came from a family friend, an old fisherman who lived by the coast. He told me about a bell tower that rang only during storms to warn of danger. One night, as a fierce storm raged, the bell began ringing furiously, though no one was in danger and the tower had been abandoned for years. Curiosity got the better of a young woman from the village, and she climbed the spiral stairs to investigate. At the top, she found an old man pulling the bell with desperate intensity. His rain-soaked clothes and pale face made her hesitate, but he turned and muttered, "They're here." A lightning strike followed, and he vanished. When the villagers searched the next day, they found the bell tower untouched, its bell rusted and immobile. But far out at sea, dark figures could be seen walking toward the shore. If this chilling tale gave you goosebumps, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more stories like this. Thank you for tuning in to Ghostly Echoes. Until next time,